This is a follow-up video to our SAP Fiori app recommendation analysis video that we posted recently. Okay, so this analysis report for Fiori app recommendations is based out of um, the SAP Fiori apps reference library. Now with this report, you can identify the SAP Fiori apps that best fits your business needs. Okay, and tool, this report bases its recommendations on uh, two factors mainly. One is the relevance of the apps based on the transaction usage in your environment, and the readiness of your systems to implement Fury apps. Okay, so the relevance of the apps, basically what it means is that which Fury apps are relevant for you based on the business processes you use. And readiness of the system means that how ready your system is to implement Fury apps um, based on the components that are installed in your systems. So this recommendation analysis report provides you with information such as which Fury apps are relevant for the business processes you use, um, which Fury apps, uh, if they are already installed, right, can be used without any system update. Also, it also gives you the information about uh, SAP Fury apps that can be used as assuming a software update or data migration is done, and also mm, installations such as plugins and add-ons which may be required in order to use certain Fury apps. So depending on what the transaction codes you use and what components, the plugins and add-ons are installed in your systems, this report will recommend the Fury apps for you. Okay. Now this report uses the list of transaction codes um, that is uploaded into the Fury apps reference library, on which this Fury apps recommendation analysis provides a list of Fury apps that fit the business processes you use. Okay. So like I said, it also checks the readiness of your system environment by providing a list of installed software component versions. Okay, and this report will also show you whether or not all required components are already installed in your landscape, or display the missing product versions required for installing a particular Fury app. So in order to use this report, there are mainly three prerequisites. Okay, the first one is that you need to have is user ID, the service marketplace user ID, to log into the Fury apps reference library to use this report. Okay, that's the main thing. You need to have a S user ID. The second requisite that you have for this report is you need to have a list of transaction codes that you are using in your environment. Now, it is not necessary that you need to have the list of transaction codes, especially if it's a new implementation, like a greenfield implementation, right, where everything you do from scratch, which means you don't have a history of transaction codes to go with. So based on your business processes and on the roles and the role matrix that you define, on the transaction codes that you identify as part of the greenfield business requirement gathering, you could use that list to simulate to find out what Fury apps would you be needing. So which means that you can create this list of transaction usage manually also. Okay. And the third prerequisites that you need is the list of components that are installed in your system. Again, if it's a greenfield implementation, you could make some assumption as to what components would be installed. The basis team can help you to get the list of those components, and you can use those components list to simulate this report. So there are mainly three prerequisites. Okay, so one is the S user ID, second one is the transaction code usage, and third one is uh, the system components list, right? The add-ons and the plugins that are installed in your systems. Now in a greenfield, you'll have to assume, greenfield implementation, because you do everything from scratch, you will need to assume certain things. But, if you're migrating from, ECC system to S4HANA, and you plan to implement Fiori, so that comes into, brownfield type of implementation, wherein, you already have a history of transaction codes that have been used. So you can get that list, the history, in a couple of different ways. We'll talk about those. And and because you already have the systems in place, you know what components are installed. So you can take that list and use it in this report. So the first thing that you do is you log in with the S user ID. Then you click on this Fiori app recommendation button. And after that, a wizard will begin, which will guide you through the steps required to perform this relevance and readiness analysis for Fiori apps. Okay. Now, there are two options you get. One is for displaying existing analysis, which means that you can use this report as many times as you want. Okay, and whenever you want to go back and view but analysis from a particular run, you could use this display existing analysis. So we'll come back to this after we do create a new one. Okay, so let's create the new analysis first. Okay, and then you click on step 2. Now the first thing that you need is the usage profile. Usage profile is basically your transaction codes. Okay, the list of transaction codes that are in use in your environment. Okay, so there are two or three different ways of you can get this list, right? One, you can get it using ST03 or ST03N transaction code, right? So you can ask your basis administrator to give you that list, give you that report for a specific certain period of time, 6 months or 1 year, whichever you prefer. And from that report you remove everything except the transaction codes, and the report would look like this. The list would look like something like this. Okay. Now, one more point you need to understand. Another prerequisite that you have with regards to the files is that these files have to be saved as .cs in the .csv format. Okay. So if somebody gives you the ST03, ST03 and report, and you can filter out or remove all the unnecessary columns and just have the transaction codes list. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Second way of doing it is you can go to the production system and download the AGR underscore T codes table for your active roles, the roles that are in use. And from that report, remove all the columns except the transaction codes column, and save that as a .csv format. And the third way is, you could create the CSV file on your own. Just give the title, your description in the first row, and then list out all the transaction codes that you want, uh, under that title. Okay, so you can create this file, the usage profile file, that is a transaction code list file, and manually also. Okay, so let's go and create a, so to create a usage profile, right, you need to click on upload new profile. Okay, so let's say I'll give a name called S4HANA usage profile. Okay, so one more thing you need to remember here is that in the name, you cannot have spaces. Okay, so I prefer to use underscores. Let's see what happens if you do this, right? Without using a space. And in the file name, you need to pick the CSV file in which your transaction code list is stored by saved. Okay, it's a CSV file. And then you can say, give a note for this. I'll copy this, and when I try to upload it, it says special characters, this are not allowed. Okay, so spaces are not allowed in the usage profile name. Okay, so once this is done, so click on upload, and what this upload will do is from that transaction code list, it will filter out any invalid transaction codes that may be there. Okay, so maybe those transaction codes are obsolete or blacklisted in S4HANA. So it filters out the invalid transaction codes. So when you click OK, so now the usage profile is created. So next click on step 3, and step 3 is where you specify, you upload your system profiles, the system details for front end as well as back end. We are not going to use HANA profile in this example. This is not mandatory. It's not. This is optional. Okay, because S4 HANA, and we're going to mainly work with Fiori apps for S4 HANA. Okay. Now, how do you generate this list of system profile, right? The components that are installed in your systems. So what you do is, for that you need to go to your system, the backend system, and from system menu, you go to status and click on display for product version. So this is what you get, right? Now you can right click, you can copy paste these 3 columns: component, release, and support pack level. Okay, these are the 3 columns that you would need. Okay, you don't need support pack and this. You can copy paste Control Y and Control C if you want to do that, or you can right click anywhere on the screen and click on spreadsheet. Okay, and you can download it in an Excel file and then remove the unnecessary columns, the support package column and the short description column. Okay, so when you do that, your file is going to look like this. Okay, so you have the components, list of components, then you have the release, and then you have the support pack level. Okay, so you do this for both front-end system, which will be your Fiori system, and then your back-end system, which is going to be your S4HANA system. So now let us select what are for which system, what product suite are we doing this analysis. So you have 4 options here. Okay, so business suite is going to be your ECC, if your S4HANA is on cloud, or here it's on-premise, right? So let's select S4HANA, SAP S4HANA, and then we upload the system profile for the front-end system and the back-end system. To do that, click on upload new profile and just say Fiori front-end system profile. Okay. And then you pick the .csv format. Again, when you download these files, all the three files that you need here are going to be in .csv format. Okay, so you have to save whatever change modifications you do to any file. After making the changes, you save it as save the changes as .csv file. Okay, so this is a Fiori system, front-end system. Let's take that. Let's pick the database as HANA database and say give a node and upload. So if everything is good with the CSV file, you'll get the upload successful message. Do the same with backend system also. So click on upload new profile. With the backend system profile CSV file, select the database and give a node. Click on upload. So everything is good with the file, and that's why it says upload successful. So we're going to remove, we're not going to use HANA system profile. So let's click on step 4. And the final step in this is to give a name for this analysis report, right? So it's for HANA Fiori recommendation analysis report. Okay, and then let's copy this, the description also, and then click on get SAP Fiori app recommendations. So it will take a few seconds depending on how many transaction codes you have in your list, in the usage profile, and then display the list of apps. So when you finally get this report, right, so what it does is it basically will display the report with a relevance score, which basically tells you which app is important for you based on your transaction code usage. Okay, and if you look at the system readiness here, right, this status summarizes whether or not the required software components are installed in your landscape. Okay, that is based on your selected system profiles for your S/4HANA suite, as well as your backend and front-end system. Okay. Now, the results of this analysis shows an overall, installation status that is, partly installed, not installed, and installed. There will be third category called installed. Okay. That is for each Fiori app. Okay, it displays this partly installed, not installed, or installed status for readiness status for each of the Fiori apps. Now, so this is the system readiness status that you have. Now, this other column that is important here for us to understand is the relevance score column. Okay, so this is basically your rating of the app, which basically tells you whether, depending on your system usage, how important the apps are going to be. Okay, so for example, if you have this level 3 rating, right? So what this means is that this Fiori app is highly relevant for you because it directly matches a transaction code that you are already using. So in this case, the transaction code that it matches is F1, F110. Okay, so this has been used in your environment, so that's why this comes with relevance score 3, rating 3. Okay. Now for relevance score or rating 1 or 2, okay, what it means is um, this the Fury app, for example, in this case, one monetary purchase or the down payments app, okay, has a relevance score of 1 because you are using a transaction code, okay, that belongs to the area purchasing. Okay, so this report didn't find a direct transaction code that links it with this particular app, but the report found transaction codes that belong to the same area, okay, which in this case is uh, purchasing, and the application area here is um, mm what is it, mm-pu. Okay, so when you see a rating, relevance rating of 1 or 2, that means a direct link between a used transaction code and the Fury app was not found by this report. But the report did find something from that particular application area. Okay, so if you look here, it is again purchasing, and this is again 110. It's linked with. So okay, this one manage outgoing checks is linked with the transaction, is matched with the transaction FCHN. That was part of the usage list. That's why you have the rating is 3. Now if you look at this assign open items, there was no direct transaction code found for this app, but the report found some transaction that belong to the application area accounts receivable. Okay. Now, if you look at the system readiness, then see the front-end system, you have everything installed in this case, but the database does not match HANA database because we picked HANA database, and the system components list that we uploaded did not have HANA database in it. So to implement these apps, okay, the database needs to be migrated to HANA database. Okay, so these are the based on these information, you can determine which apps you want to implement or relevant, most relevant to your environment. Now, you can also download this report in Excel file. Okay, and this is the list view of the report, but if you click on the detailed view, so it takes time to load, but let it load. It will take you to the Fiori library, and here you could have the details of the any app that you want to implement. Okay, if you can go to implementation information, go to installation to see what components are needed for that particular app, and then it will also give you the configuration details that are needed for implementing that app. Okay, so if you switch back to list view, okay, Now, like I said, you can download this report. Okay, you have the download button at the bottom. Now, if you want to, display, let's say you want to display now, right? Let's go to the second option now. Now, if you go to display existing analysis, and then in step 2, you can pick the run of the report and then say run analysis. So if you have executed this report or used this report 10 times, all those will be listed here. Okay, and you can pick any one that you want, and it will give you the details of that run, that report, that execution. Okay, when you click on run analysis, you again get that report. Okay, now if you see here, there is something called as manage profiles. When you click on that, it will give you that list, whatever you have, the number of times you have executed. And each one of these tabs will give you the different names, system profile name, the usage profile names that you had used for those reports. Okay, so this is how you could use this report to analyze, to get the list of recommended Fiori apps for your S4 HANA environment.